This is the Actors Room Podcast. My name's Jeff, and this is episode number 139. We're going to talk about a documentary called Brats, referring to the phenomenon that was created in 1985 called the Brat Pack. It's legendary. Most people that grew up in the 80s know about the Brat Pack. Very influential, exciting, cool, and sort of mysterious. We're going to touch on it. Things talked about in the documentary. It was written and directed by one of the members of the Brat Pack, Andrew McCarthy. And boy, did Andrew have a lot to say about the Brat Pack. I guess it's been a thorn in his side, his ass, everywhere on his body for the past 30 to 35 years. And he just needed to talk about it. Oh, he did. And so will we in the Actors Room. Here we go. Oh, Andrew McCarthy. You feel for him in this doc, going through this whirlwind of emotion and contemplation. This defined term, fad, fashion, Brat Pack thing has been stirring in his body and mind and soul for what seems to be an eternity. It destroyed his career, right? And he wants to get to the bottom of it. He wants to find everybody that was in the Brat Pack and talk to them, interview them. I think that Andrew's wife thought it would be great for him to do this. Sort of cleanse himself of this menacing term, the Brat Pack. And what does it mean? What it did to them, all of them. Let's get to that right now, actually. Who is in the Brat Pack? And there isn't a defined list that you can go, this is the Brat Pack, this is everybody that was in the Brat Pack, book it, there it is. Can't do it. This is who I think is in the Brat Pack. I mean, not any outsiders, but the central core of the Brat Pack. Andrew McCarthy, Emilio Estevez, Rob Lowe, Demi Moore, Ali Sheedy, Anthony Michael Hall, Judd Nelson, and Molly Ringwald. Those are the main Brat Packers, in my opinion. It spawns mostly from John Hughes and his film, the incredible film that I haven't talked about yet, which is a crying shame because I love this movie with all of my heart, The Breakfast Club. It was probably the greatest adolescent, teenage film about all the different kinds of kids in high school, the sport kid, the geek, the burnout, the prom queen, the misfits, the questionable characters in school. John Hughes covered them all in The Breakfast Club. And I think that everybody that was in The Breakfast Club should belong in the Brat Pack. And that was Estevez, Ali Sheedy, Anthony Michael Hall, Judd Nelson, and Molly Ringwald. Then, of course, you have films like Pretty in Pink with McCarthy, right? And Molly Ringwald and Anthony Michael Hall. Why is it in this doc? Where's Anthony Michael Hall? He was not referenced once. Now, you see him in the doc because they show John Hughes films and things like that. But why isn't he thought of by McCarthy and or anybody else in the doc? They didn't bring his name up once. Thought that was a disgrace. I like Anthony Michael Hall. I think he was phenomenal in all of those films. He was in a lot of John Hughes films. Having him completely not mentioned at all in this doc makes no sense to me. But whatever, I guess. I get very passionate about this stuff because I'm just that guy. I don't know why. I get heated talking about Anthony Michael Hall being just shunned from this doc. But why? Why was he? It makes no sense. Not referenced at all. Like, who's in the Brat Pack? And it didn't mention him. It makes no sense. I'm trying to make sense of this world in little ways that I can. And that's the arts and film and things like that. And that's something that doesn't make sense. Moving on. Another film that comes to mind that was huge with the Brat Pack was St. Elmo's Fire. A very mediocre film, if that. But everybody in that film, right, are Brat Packers? Because St. Elmo's Fire has Estevez, Demi Moore, Rob Lowe, Andrew McCarthy, Ali Sheedy, Judd Nelson, and I would consider them all Brat Packers, except for one of the other castmates, and her name is Mare Winningham. I don't know if I said her last name right, but Mare. Because she's not mentioned at all either. Now, she was only in St. Elmo's Fire. She wasn't in The Breakfast Club. She wasn't in Pretty in Pink and some of the other films that we will touch on. During my notes section about this doc, this is how it's going to go. I'm going to read my notes, and they're sort of all over the place because this doc is sort of all over the place, with Andrew having flashbacks talking about his experiences, and then Andrew finding most of the Brat Pack and interviewing them. And good for Andrew for contacting all of these people and for him to get the interviews. And you think, well, that shouldn't be that hard to do, Jeff. I mean, Andrew McCarthy is the Brat Packer, and all these guys hang out, right? They're constantly getting together, having breakfast and making fudge, like they say in the documentary. And that's not true. Throughout the documentary, Andrew McCarthy makes it pretty clear that he hasn't spoken or seen any of these people, the Brat Pack, in 30 years. Folks, this floors me. It floors me. Does it floor you that these group of young, talented actors coined the Brat Pack back in the 80s, doing wonderful work, fun work, interesting work, movies that were successful, putting these actors in situations of opportunity, right? You would think they would bond together, form a nucleus, and be that sort of Rat Pack thing that happened with Frank Sinatra, Dean Martin, and Sammy Davis Jr. They were sort of a team back then, and they did shows together. And I know that's not the same thing, but, you know, they acted back then, and they sang, and did shows in Vegas and things like that. But they became close, the Rat Pack. The Brat Pack? No, not at all. The Brat Pack term will go on to rip them apart. Why? Why is one article written in 1985 by some Malcolm guy? I wrote his name down. We'll get to him later. But a journalist doing a story on Emilio Estevez in 1985, and then terming these young actors as the Brat Pack, will tear these people apart. This fascinates me. I was excited to watch this doc. My wife couldn't get through it. About 20 minutes in, she's like, this is not for me. And I was like, it's for me. I'll watch it later. No problem. And I did. I watched it 3 times before doing this episode of The Actors Room. I find this stuff great to dive into. The Brat Pack. It was monstrous. This phenomenon was something that my generation, was fascinated with and would have just creamed in my pants to be a part of that. Me, even young in my life, being interested in the art of acting, film, I looked at these actors, and they were older than me. They're all about 10 years older than me. I'm in my 40s. I would say most of them are in their late 50s, early 60s, around there. I looked up to them. I watched these films that came out, and there's so many of them in the 80s with these young budding actors. Ferris Bueller's Day Off, 16 Candles. You had All the Right Moves and Risky Business and The Outsiders. I could go on, and they just keep flowing and flowing. All these Back to the Future. Just these phenomenal, great films that someone in the 80s, a kid growing up, we had a lot of movies that we could watch and appreciate, enjoy, put in our VCR again and again and again, and guess what? We did. I looked up to them. I felt, what a great thing. What a great thing. It's so hard for any actor to get into that position that all of these actors were in. And to have it sort of all just fall apart for them because of an article that came out terming them the Brat Pack. All of a sudden, they're just not that serious as actors are. You know what I mean? Like, as soon as this article comes out and they're termed the Brat Pack, no big director would ever want to work with them. And I say, that's bullshit. I don't know where this comes from. Just because they're Brat Packers, they're just not taken seriously? Who says that? They say that? They feel that? Maybe because of that they're brats, spoiled? Well, maybe they are. And I came to that conclusion when I was like, are they brats? And in a way, yeah, they are. They're young, they're talented, then they're spoiled. Actors and stuff like that on set and famous people, they're spoiled. Okay? People get them things. They're taken care of. So I'm sorry, guys. I mean, you got to look at their success in these films that John Hughes created and other very talented writers and directors did too back in the 80s that made them stars. And I get this, that once you get a taste of fame, stardom, success, it's like a drug. And I could get that. I understand it. I do. I think that is true. That is as lucky and fortunate as these young actors are to land these roles. Once you do, you're in, you're successful, it now becomes a problem. There's problems attached to stardom. And boy, did the term Brat Pack add an extra weight to all of these young, budding, hopeful stars. You know, sorry, Brat Pack. We're going to add on more turmoil and stress to your acting lives. Let's get to the doc, shall we? I mean, is Jeff going to just sit here and rant for the next half hour? I might. I already did. This is the Actors Room, a podcast about actors, actresses, directors, producers, writers, right? I talk of film. I'll break down films. I'll talk about documentaries. It has anything to do with film, even the better. So that's what we're doing this week because of Andrew McCarthy. Andrew McCarthy wrote this, directed it, stars in it. It's his baby. He wanted to talk about it, and he does. So let's get into it. McCarthy talks about his time in New York. At the age of 17, going to NYU in New York City, acting school, things like that. I went when I was 20. Andrew went when he was 17. Wow, that's young. Okay. And he talks about how dirty, scary New York City was in 1980. I believe it. I would go in the 80s. It was pretty scary. He talks about his youth, smoking joints, and watching the Rockford Files. He would play Frisbee in the park. This is all irrelevant, but Andrew felt it was necessary to talk about in his doc. But I find it interesting. I like it. It's irrelevant. But for me, I like that stuff. I like to hear that Andrew would smoke a couple joints a day, be a kid, having fun, experiencing life. Good, you should, right? The mystery to me, and I didn't do extensive research into the life and times of McCarthy because I just didn't want to. He doesn't fascinate me very much. I thought he was pretty good in the John Hughes movies. I thought he was fine. I thought he was. I really liked him in Weekend at Bernie's. He was pretty funny in that. I'm trying. Mannequin was a pretty good movie, right? Not because of him, I don't think, but I thought the movie was pretty good. Andrew McCarthy isn't the most talented actor I've ever seen. He's okay. He's fine, and he did really well with the Brat Pack movies. Okay. But like I said, I didn't really dive into how Andrew McCarthy gets his first movie role within 2 years of being in New York City. It's amazing to me how some of these guys, and it happens, they get work right away. They get in the door. They do the right audition. They meet the right people, right? They did something right, no matter what it was, whether it was shady or not. I'm not saying that Andrew was shady. I'm just saying he was extremely lucky to get success pretty much right off the bat. Okay, I want to get into what Andrew McCarthy says in the doc. He says that because of the article in 1985, branding them the Brat Pack, that it gave them no wiggle room in their careers, that they were so sort of pigeonholed. Great word. Pigeonholed. And no actor wants to be pigeonholed into one character or just one thing. That's bad. Actors like to branch out and do different things and want to be selective, or they want directors to want to work with them and not do just comedies and not do just rom-coms. There might be some actors that want to do just one thing, but the creative ones, the ones that want to reach levels of success beyond their wildest dreams, want wiggle room. Andrew felt there was no wiggle room with this Brat Pack thing. It was that bad, Andrew. I'm trying to figure this out, and I think that's why this doc fascinated me so much, is getting into that realization back in 1985 that because of one magazine article and how it just caught fire, that all of them, including McCarthy, were now restricted. And we're going to get to Emilio Estevez being interviewed first. He got Emilio. He got him first. And that was a good thing. Because Emilio Estevez is a good dude. He is. And you know why? By their conversation that they have. It's a good conversation. And Emilio comes right out and mentions that one thing that I was talking about, how because of the article, the Brat Pack didn't really want to work together anymore. They wanted to be able to break free of that and do other things. So Emilio had a project back in the day he really wanted to do. And someone on that project mentioned, hey, let's get Andrew McCarthy to do it too. Emilio said, not going to happen. Not going to happen. Andrew found out about that and was hurt. And I get that. If I'm doing great work with a bunch of people, ensemble cast, you think, okay, we may not hang out all the time, but we're together, we're doing good things, it feels good, it's successful. Let's keep that going. And if other projects come up and we're doing something great, I'm gonna have you do it with me, and that's a good thing. What was with this Brat Pack thing? That it was a bad thing. There's so many directors that work with certain actors and they get into comfortability with them and they continue to do great work. Why was it different with this bunch? Why? Were there a couple of misfits within the group that they felt well, let's just separate because there's a couple of people in the group that are just a-holes and I don't want to be around them. They could be, folks. We don't really know what really happened when these guys and girls got together, not only on set, but maybe they did get together offset. And it didn't work. And they wanted to separate themselves as much as possible. And maybe that's it. But it was very touching to see Emilio and Andrew talk about the fact that, hey, I didn't want to work with you. That's what Emilio said. I didn't want to work with you. I would have been the same way with Judd. Okay, we'll talk about Judd real quick. In the doc, it's mentioned that Judd Nelson is hard to find. I found that interesting because from what I get, or my feeling on this, Judd Nelson has nothing to do with the Brat Pack. Not then or now. He just doesn't. And neither does Molly Ringwald, I guess. Judd Nelson, I don't think is, I don't know. I met him a few times. He was very standoffish. And it was a laid-back setting when I met him. It wasn't like I met him on the street. I don't want to say exactly where I knew him, but he was a friend of a friend. So it wasn't like I was hounding, hey, running up to him in the middle of the street. He was very standoffish, and I don't know. I'm going to be pretty clear here, okay? I don't think he's a very likable person. So I can only imagine what it was like working with Judd Nelson. It may not have been a very good time. And he has nothing really to do with the Brat Pack anyway. So is he sort of a cancer in the clubhouse? He could be. I'm not saying he is. I'm not saying that. I'm not. Strike that from the record. No, I'm not saying that. Judd could have been the nicest guy on the set. The one that wanted to hold them all together. I don't believe that. But that could be true. Maybe it was Ringwald that was the fucking bitch of the group and nobody wanted to work with her. No wonder she has nothing to do with the Brat Pack. She thought they were all just untalented and I'm blah, 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 blah. God only knows, right? You get a group of people together. I mean, they were hired to do a project together. They're not all going to get along, folks. Family members don't get along. So, and they obviously didn't hang out. The Brat Pack weren't friends. They weren't. I think that floors people in a way. If you were to poll all the kids in the 80s, right, at that time and now, and say, the Brat Pack, you know who they are, right? Oh, yeah, of course. Oh, yeah. Do you think that after the film is done, that people of the Brat Pack hang out and have a good time? I think most people would say yes. Of course they do. Look at them on screen. They all look like they really like each other. Good chemistry. Of course they hang out, right? No, they don't. They didn't. They probably never will. Another good example is Richard Pryor and Gene Wilder. Worked tremendously together. Fabulous chemistry. It worked. It clicked. Their movie's funny. And you could tell they had great connection on screen. Off screen, not at all. They never got together for coffee. Not even coffee. And that blows people away. They go, why not? Well, because they just didn't want to hang out. They were two completely different people. And same could be said about the Brat Pack. They were just different kind of people. It just blows my mind that McCarthy hadn't seen any of them in 30 years. I mean, wow. Is Rob Lowe hanging out with Demi Moore? I don't think so. Emilio hanging out with Rob Lowe? No. Andrew didn't see any of them. Didn't have any contact information for Judd Nelson. Interesting. Blows me away. Now, he was able to, I think he had numbers to some of them. But it's great that he was able to get most of them, to interview them in this documentary. So let's continue. Tangents will happen on this show, The Actors Room. That's my show. It's been a while, about a half a year since I've done a show. So I might go on tangents and they might be long. Hang in there with me, folks. If you haven't seen the documentary yet, I recommend it. If you're a fan of all those great 80s movies back then, right? You know what I'm talking about. There was some great work done back then, and we got it. We loved it. It was the 80s. And the 80s now are sort of just looked on and smiled upon. They are. I love that. I think my kids are fascinated with the 80s, just like I was fascinated with the 50s. So from now, like 30 years from now, people are going to be fascinated with the 20s. Doubtful, but maybe they will. You could tell in the doc when McCarthy is talking to Estevez. Estevez is uncomfortable, and I like that. I like that he's uncomfortable. He hasn't seen Andrew in a long time, and they're talking about some pretty deep stuff. Something that Emilio just doesn't want to talk about, but felt I will because Andrew asked me. He's a good dude, Emilio. Good dude. I wonder how Charlie's doing. I would have been great if Andrew was like, oh, by the way, how's Charlie doing? Charlie was sort of on the outside looking in with the Brat Pack in a way. He was in Red Dawn. He was in Ferris Bueller's Day Off. I mean, he was around. Not a Brat Packer, though. Just sort of on the really, on the far outside looking in. But whenever I see Emilio, of course, I think of Charlie. I think of his dad, Martin, and how it's not a complete shock that Emilio got into the business. His dad was a big star, and Emilio wanted to be an actor. He took on the Estevez name instead of Sheen, and I commend him for that. I was going to say condemn him. No, I commend him for that. That's good. It's a good thing. All right, looking at my notes here. Actors don't want to be pigeonholed, I put. I already talked about that. I think that's pretty clear for most actors. There are other entertainers that put themselves in positions to pretty much only be remembered as one character, like Pee Wee Herman, right? Paul Reubens will forever be known as Pee Wee Herman. He pigeonholed himself for the most part. That's him. Now, Paul Reubens did act and do other film roles. The cocaine movie with Johnny Depp, it's escaping me right now. Blow. Okay. Like, there are characters that he played, not many, but, pigeonholed is a term not smiled upon by most actors. I don't know. It seems to me that the Brat Pack, for the most part, didn't like the pigeonholed idea that this article presented to them. I mean, Emilio Estevez, Andrew McCarthy, and all of those Brat Packers didn't want to be called the Brat Pack. That wasn't their thing. Rob Lowe didn't give an interview in 1985 and go, yeah, we call ourselves the Brat Pack. They didn't ask for it. It just happens. But that's Hollywood. The illusion. And I think it was Leah Thompson in this doc that mentioned Hollywood and how it's just an illusion. How everyone just gets along and they party together. And it's wonderful. No, it's the illusion of Hollywood. And although it is a small place and talent is sort of circulated, if you piss off the wrong person, you may not work. Or you may work, but not in very choice roles. It's luck and determination and talent. And why is it this pigeonholed idea didn't pertain to Rob Lowe? Rob Lowe, in my opinion, is very successful still. He broke away. Why? Why did Rob Lowe do well and not Andrew McCarthy or Judd Nelson? Molly Ringwald, she's doing okay. And look at Demi Moore. Very successful. She broke away. So what does that say? It says to me that maybe it was talent and determination and not having that term, Brat Pack, constrict you or just make you sad. Right, Andrew? Andrew McCarthy was pretty sad and pissed that he was termed a Brat Packer and couldn't let it go. And him doing this documentary, I hope that helped you, Andrew. I hope that after this documentary, you let it go. And I mean, he seemed to do stage work, and I'm sure he still works. I haven't really looked at his resume. Like I said, I'm not really into Andrew McCarthy. But it obviously hurt him, like psychologically, emotionally, spiritually. This whole Brat Pack thing, I mean, it devastated him. He was just devastated. But makes for good shows on the Actors Room. Talking about documentaries given by Andrew McCarthy about the Brat Pack. I loved it. And I'm still on what? Emilio? Oh my God. Let's see. Yeah, okay. I love how Andrew McCarthy brought up that big directors didn't want to work with him because he was a Brat Packer. Is that true, though? That's why Emilio agrees. But wait a minute, Emilio. You'll go on to do work with big directors? So, okay, moving on. Ali Sheedy is interviewed next, and I put, she is sweet and adorable. It seems to me that how do I say this? She has fond memories of the Brat Pack, I think. She may not come out and really say it in the doc. And may not say that to Andrew with the interview she gave with him. I think she feels sorry for Andrew because it hit him so hard. I'm not saying it didn't hit her too. It hit them all. And they had to deal with it. But Allie looks back and goes, it was a great time. And it was, I'm sure. Being an actress and getting the Breakfast Club. She looks back fondly on the Breakfast Club. And she should. All of them should. Maybe that's bad on me to say that. I mean, it might have been a bad experience for Molly Ringwald. I don't know. It probably wasn't. I think that all of them had a good time making The Breakfast Club. It was a very successful film. Historic. I think that a lot of people that think back to high school can identify with what John Hughes gave us. And Ali Sheedy got that. I think they all did. I do. Even Judd Nelson says that he respected John Hughes very much. And that John Hughes understood what it was like and remembered what it was like being a teenager. I think a lot of adults forget what it was like to be young. Maturity sheds off all of the dumb things we did before and how we felt and feel. And it's just not true. I think that people don't want to remember. They forget. Just shut off all those painful memories back then. But there were good memories too. John Hughes remembered what it was like going through all this shit that most of us go through at a very sensitive time in our lives. So this will be on par, on the same line as what we're talking about with the Brat Pack. Yes, they were adults, most of them in their early 20s, but early 20s is still pretty young. And this Brat Pack notion, idea, term, hit them harder than, say, if this was done when they were in their 30s. Being impressionable as they were, and being in the beginning of their careers, budding stars. It hurt them more than it would have someone older with more wisdom in the business. So in that way, I get it. And I think to myself, if I was in their position, if I was, say, Andrew McCarthy, and walking in his shoes, doing that work, and having a taste of success, and then being termed a Brat Packer, and having to battle that, how would I have dealt with it? With my personality. Because everybody's different. And I can't say, because guess what? I don't know how Andrew felt. How Demi Moore felt. Anthony Michael Hall. Sorry, folks, he's a Brat Packer. How did Anthony feel? And it's just too bad that he wasn't sought after. Maybe Anthony Michael Hall made it clear in the beginning. I will never talk to any of you motherfuckers again. Leave me alone. Could be. He doesn't look the type, but I don't know. But I like Ali Sheedy. I thought she was great in the doc. She looked very open to talk about it. I think most did. I think she liked the Brat Pack. Next up, John Cryer was a third interview. Is he a Brat Packer? I don't think so. He was in Pretty in Pink with Andrew McCarthy and Molly Ringwald and James Spader. James Spader also not a Brat Packer. He was in just that one. He was in Tough Stuff, but that was not a Brat Packer movie, I don't think. But James Spader is one hell of a talent. Even if he was a Brat Packer, he would have broke away. He's just tremendously talented. James Spader is tremendously talented. And let's see. John Cryer, I put very intelligent, well-spoken. I don't think he liked the Brat Pack definition either. He had nothing to do with it. He would give interviews about it back then in 85 and wanted to be separated from that right off the bat. Not a Brat Packer, step away, and there you go. This was brought up, and I find this right on the nose of what the Brat Pack was. It was pop culture, fashionable, okay? It was a great term by the journalist. It caught fire. It became pop culture. And in the 80s, if it popped, folks, it popped. You could have sold trading cards of the Brat Pack. You could have made toys, little figurines in the toy stores, okay? We would have bought them. They could have toured and filled stadiums, sitting on stage, doing little scenes, or giving interviews. They would have filled stadiums. Folks, I know it. They were a pop culture phenomenon. Kind of like New Kids on the Block, right? They could have sang, danced. Yikes. But I think that's a good explanation of what it just sort of happened like that back then. It wasn't like it is today. I mean, it's just a different time. And I think that a kid in the 80s putting in The Breakfast Club, right? Ferris Bueller's Day Off, and watching it in the summer or whenever, it was part of their day. It was part of their week. It was part of their summer. It was part of their year. It was part of their childhood. And it just keeps getting bigger and bigger and bigger. And the layers, there's layers to it. Whether you want to believe it or not, the fabric of our childhood was interwoven with these stars and the characters they played, how interesting the whole ensemble cast was, and their story, and how they looked. And Rob Lowe was gorgeous. Demi Moore, beautiful, right? And all of them were very talented. So it worked. They were cast well. The parts written for them They worked, and we fell in love with the films. And it became a part of our childhood. It did for me. So when this documentary came out, I went, I'm going to watch this. And I hope that it's at least decent, because we're going to get little nuggets here and there, things that I didn't know about, and things I'm going to want to talk about. And I am in this doc, and we will continue. Here we go. John motherfucking Hughes, right? Holy shit, the films that he's given us. And for the Brat Pack, even though they don't like the term Brat Pack, it was John Hughes. They gave these young actors juicy, solid roles. It was an ensemble, and I love ensembles, and most of them are group study projects. Of course, Breakfast Club, Pretty in Pink, 16 Candles, Weird Science, for crying out loud, which Anthony Michael Hall was in. And so is Robert Downey Jr. Is he a Brat Packer? No. Next up to be interviewed, but before we lead into Leah Thompson's interview, who was in Back to the Future, and Some Kind of Wonderful, okay, with Eric Stoltz, the scope of the scope of Hollywood back in the 80s and young actors, like, it seems kind of small, but it really wasn't. I mean, there was a sphere of actors back then. I mean, I just mentioned Some Kind of Wonderful that Leah Thompson was in. Eric Stoltz was in that, right? Mary Stuart Masterson. Is she a Brat Packer? But she was in the conversation in that time of all these movies coming out about youth. I mean, these are big actors. Like Sean Penn was around that time. Fast Times at Ridgemont High. Is he a Brat Packer? No, but he was part of that world. A young, talented actor doing films at that time. They were all part of something very special. The Outsiders, right? You got Patrick Swayze, Rob Lowe, C. Thomas Howell, Ralph Macchio, also doing work back then. I mean, they all can't be Brat Packers, but they were part of that same idea. Okay. And most of it started with John Hughes, by the way. He was like the godfather of the Brat Pack, in a sense. He was dishing out all these roles to great young actors. Here, take this one. Here, hey, take this one. This is a great movie role. You want this? John Hughes is brilliant, by the way. Brilliant. Genius. Leah Thompson, the fourth interview for Andrew McCarthy. Why is she being interviewed? I said, okay, all right. She was in Some Kind of Wonderful. I get it. She was in Back to the Future. She did a few. I'm trying to think. Was she in Red Dawn? Right. I don't know. Jennifer Grey is another one, right? She was in Ferris Bueller's Day Off. Red Dawn, right? Dirty Dancing, Patrick Swayze. I mean, they're all... Do you see what I'm talking about? It boggles my mind how all these actors work together in all these different movies. It's like over and over again. Over and over again. So like Leah Thompson. Okay. I'd like how she said about Hollywood. It's an illusion. She seems like a very sweet person. And the part that I find most interesting about her interview, okay, she wanted to be part of the Brat Pack. Was she the only actor/actress in Hollywood that wanted to be in the Brat Pack, but wasn't? There are Andrew McCarthy or Molly Ringwald going, Leah, if you want to take my spot, come on up. And she would have taken it. Me personally, I would have given my left nut to be in the Brat Pack. But that's just me. Maybe if I was in it, I wouldn't want to be. But the illusion of the Brat Pack looked pretty fun to me. Being a successful actor hanging around all these cool people, doing great movies, going to great parties, right? Hanging out with Sammy Davis Jr. Yeah, that sounds like a good time. Why the fuck wouldn't I want to do that in my early 20s? I would have enjoyed it very, very much. The stories that these people have. The stories. The parties. The interactions. Rubbing elbows with these legends. Legends. And I get there's other stuff that happens offset and the stress and all that, but it just seems so glorious to me. And although I thumb my nose to Hollywood and how fake it is and all that stuff, and it is, okay, it sure looks like a lot of fun, doesn't it? Just to be in that, you know what I would probably do? I know I'm ranting. I would probably want to be a movie star just to see what it's like for 6 months. And then it just goes away and I become a normal person again. Just to get a taste of it and go, wow, that was cool. I experienced that. I got a taste of it. And some people are like, no, that would suck. Why would you want that? I think it would be fun. Okay. Whew, I know, right? Okay, they mentioned St. Elmo's Fire. I got to watch this movie again. It's been a while. I love the music. The Man in Motion, the song. Great song, excellent video. It's just, nostalgic for me. You know what I like even more is the instrumental theme song of St. Elmo's Fire. It would come on the radio every now and then. It's such a beautiful song. I think the song is better than the movie. If it wasn't for that song, and Man in Motion, I don't know if the movie would have been that big or good. Is the movie good? No, I give Andrew McCarthy credit. I think Andrew McCarthy was probably the best actor in that movie. What do you think? Andrew McCarthy's not a bad actor, and I just don't find him that fascinating. I think he's a good actor. I don't think he's great. I think he's good. And he was good in St. Elmo's Fire. Is Emilio a good actor? He's interesting. Rob Lowe is talented. I don't think people realize how intelligent Rob Lowe is, and talented and very handsome, which helped him out tremendously. And Demi Moore, very talented, very beautiful. I'm not surprised that she's most likely the biggest star out of the Brat Pack. She had it all. And Judd Nelson. I only see Judd as kind of a prick. And I'm not saying that as a person, but as a character and as an actor. It seemed to me he only played that snarky sort of, narcissistic character. Did he feel pigeonholed because of Breakfast Club? There you go. I think Judd enjoyed playing Bender, John Bender. He enjoyed it. He fucking nailed it, by the way. But did it sort of put him on a path that he didn't like and wanted to break free of and never could, and soured him, both onset and offset? I don't know. I like Judd Nelson in some of the things he's done, but overall, I don't think he had enough talent to break free the way Demi Moore did, the way Rob Lowe did. It's hard to say. And it could be just the opportunity, being in the right place at the right time. Judd, I think, had his opportunities, and he just didn't. Either the role wasn't right for him, the project flamed out. I know he did some TV work. He just didn't have that right project. Maybe. Or it could be that he's an asshole. The next interview, which I found interesting, I was surprised to see him Timmy Hutton, good old Tim Hutton, fabulous, talented actor, became big when he won an Oscar for his role in Ordinary People, a role that many, many, many young actors pined for, auditioned for. Tim Hutton got it. Won an Oscar. If you've never seen Ordinary People, directed by Robert Redford, is fabulous. Quite a character for a young actor to do. Tim Hutton, as any young actor at any time in their career can identify with, I mean, that's a role that you pine for, yet are frightened of. Tim had to go deep, and he did. And I note that Tim Hutton would have been the perfect actor to play Holden Caulfield in Catcher in the Rye. Now, of course, there is no movie about that book, Catcher in the Rye, because the writer of that book said it will never happen. He didn't want to see his words on paper thrown into someone else's hands. And I get it. But there are people that want to see The Catcher in the Rye on film. I'm one of them. And Tim Hutton would have been Holden Caulfield. Whenever I read Catcher in the Rye, I see Tim Hutton as Holden. Just do. Or someone very similar to Tim. That's how perfect he was in Ordinary People and in his career. He did Falcon and the Snowman. Great movie with Sean Penn. So he was around. Andrew McCarthy says to Tim that we stood on your shoulders. That's how big Hutton was to the Brat Pack bunch. Tim Hutton wasn't a Brat Packer. Okay. He was doing serious roles before the Brat Pack was formed. So he was, of course, not a part of it. He was definitely looking at the situation going, wow, fascinating. I'm sure Hutton felt sorry for them in that way because Hutton was already taken seriously, won an Oscar. Okay. He wasn't pigeonholed. No, not at all. And although Mr. Hutton will not reach the heights of a Rob Lowe or Demi Moore, even Emilio, right? I mean, all you people out there who may be listening to my show, are there other memorable performances by Mr. Hutton that pop into your head like they do with Rob Lowe or Demi Moore, right? No, of course not. You're like, Ordinary People? I've heard of that movie. But a lot of people may not have seen it. So Tim Hutton isn't like these big stars of today, but was well respected back in the 80s. And he was. I still have a soft spot in my heart for Timothy Hutton. Tremendous talent and just a wonderful person. I have a friend that is doing pretty well and says that, you know, he did a project with Hutton, and Hutton will just call him up and want to go to lunch just to talk. Like, he's that guy. And maybe that's why he wasn't the big star. It's because he's just a normal guy. He's just, well, yeah, you know, I do some projects. I do a film. I do some TV. I do this. I do that. Maybe he didn't want that big stardom. And I think some actors can control their career like that, where Tom Cruise wants it all. Okay. He wants it all. Tim Hutton may not want it all. He'll do a little theater. He'll do a movie here. He'll do some TV work to, you know, pay the bills. You know, you saw in the doc where he lives, it's like a big farm. He's got like, what do you say, like 70,000 bees? That's his passion. Where Tom Cruise's passion is to make $1 billion before he dies, Tim Hutton, he just wants to own a bee farm, you know, and talk to Andrew McCarthy about how it sucked for Andrew to be in the Brat Pack, you know, and call up my buddy to go to lunch every now and then when he's in town. these cool, down-to-earth people do exist in the acting world. I think they're hard to find. Okay? But they're there. They're good people. Some. They accept what their business is, and they don't let it destroy them. And I think that Andrew McCarthy let the Brat Pack, the business, the success, destroy him. Like, it was so much. And all this adulation. And then you're just torn down by an article, and it destroys your world? That's heavy. It is. And that's why this doc fascinated me. We're going to continue. His next interview is Demi Moore. And when I was a kid, I called her Demi Moore, and people looked at me like I was an idiot. I'm like, it's Demi, right? No, it's Demi. Demi Moore. He's late in meeting her. I love it. I love that he's late. I don't know why I love it. What happened there, Andrew? Get lost? Did you wake up late? You're meeting with Demi Moore. You might want to be on time. But I like that he said he was late, too. He didn't have to put that in. They could have just been late, right? Was he late meeting Emilio and he just didn't say it? I think when he was meeting Emilio, like, he got lost. So maybe he was late meeting him, too. All right. I want to note this, too, before I move on, about McCarthy. Another friend of mine in New York City would run into McCarthy a lot in Manhattan. And every time he would see him, my friend, being the idiot he is, would approach him. It's like, I don't know how you do that. I can't approach people like that. If I run into them and be like, But he would, like, seek people out. My buddy, he would seek them out. So I'm sure McCarthy was like, what the fuck? It's this fucking guy again. Leave me alone. I just want to get some coffee. I don't know why. It did. For some reason, it just kind of came in my head. Like, McCarthy running into my buddy in New York City, just being like, oh, what the fuck, man? It's a fucking guy. And how often it happens to these stars. People coming up to them like, oh, my God. I'm just trying to buy some Tylenol. I have a headache. I wanted to go out. I need some Pepto-Bismol. I need some stool softener. And I'm running into all these fucking people. I don't want to talk about Pretty in Pink. I just don't want to talk about it. No, I don't talk to Judd Nelson anymore. Nobody does. All right. Continue. We'll continue. Okay, I note the fact that Moore is a successful Brat Packer. She broke free. Talent overcomes, I put. Interesting, she's an addict. Didn't know that. I'm assuming alcohol. A little bit of... Who knows? But that was a surprise to me, that Demi Moore is an addict. Never heard of that. Why did the fake Brats as bad? My notes went sour. What is this? I'm going to try to make sense of this. I'm going to keep this in the show because it's been a while. So we're going to milk this episode as much as we can. We're going to try to make sense of this line. Let's see if we can do it. Why did the fake quote unquote brats as bad? Why did they fake? Why? All right. Why did they feel? Why did they feel Brats was bad? That's... What was I might have been getting tired when I wrote that, because it really is chicken scratch. Because I'm watching the doc and I'm taking notes, and I hardly ever pause it. I will sometimes if I have like this really interesting thought, or I want to really get into something, I'll pause it. Or if I got to go to the bathroom, whatever. Most of the time I don't. So I'm paying attention and I'm trying to write at the same time. And not only could I not read it, but it made no sense. Why would they most of them thought the Brat Pack term was bad, Jeff. And why I just can't understand that. I'm trying to make sense of it. And my next note, which I understand, sort of answers this question for me. It says, They just got tired of talking about it. Okay. I guess I could see that. But isn't that sort of the game? No. When you're successful and you have a successful film, like, say, The Godfather, very successful film. I'm sure every actor on that project talked about it a lot in interviews with friends and family to the point where they didn't want to talk about it anymore, right? The actors way back in the day in The Wizard of Oz, right? Very successful. I'm sure Judy Garland didn't want to talk about Dorothy ever again after being talked to and interviewed about it for the millionth time. I mean, I get it, but that's the game. That's the game. And I like how Demi Moore told Andrew McCarthy that you shouldn't let it bring you down. Yes, it's sort of a thorn in your side. I get it. You don't want to talk about it anymore? Fine. But you got to put it away, okay? And don't let it bring you down. It's that fear of it. Don't fear it so much. Use it as an ally. Because you can use it to your advantage. Where McCarthy wanted to push it away, you should have accepted it. And you used it as an asset. And that's what I put in my notes. Accept it. It's actors working. You were working, Andrew. Hello? Hello? Do you know how many actors? Then, now, and in the future would have done almost anything to be a part of that experience. How many actors at that time tried out for these films? I'm sure a lot. I'm trying to think. Doing research on The Breakfast Club, how many actors tried out for those roles? All those hopefuls. There's so many actors out there. And only some of them, a very small percentage, just get that chance. The door opening for you. Creaking open. And you getting in that room. You should have, yeah, you're done talking about it. And yeah, you've been pigeonholed. But, you were part of something great. And they get into that. That whole pop culture thing. And how people remember you. Andrew, you will forever be remembered in a positive way. Positive. People love those movies. I love those movies. And you were a part of that, bro. That's a great thing. And I know being famous brings on good and bad. But that's life. There's good and bad in life. You have ups and downs. Everybody does in their life. Good things happen, bad things happen, okay things happen. Then you roll with it. And you hope there's just more good than bad. And you make the best of your situation. Let's get into Rob Lowe's interview. I love Rob Lowe, always did. I just like his demeanor. Okay? I just do. I think that he also embraced the Brat Pack in a way. I don't think he hated it. I think Rob Lowe loves the attention, like he always did. He used it to his advantage. Became very successful after the Brat Pack. So that says it all. He didn't let it bring him down. He mentions being in the right place at the right time. The youth movement in movies and how he was able to take advantage of that. That was special to him. He realized that. He's very perceptive. He acknowledges everything around him. He's very intelligent. And he's also a very interesting person. He wrote an autobiography years ago, and it's good. It's an audiobook. So if you find the means, I would highly, highly recommend that you read or listen to Rob Lowe's book. Oh, my brother recommended it to me, and I went, okay, I'll listen to it. I couldn't stop listening to Rob Lowe just go on and on about his life. He's been through a lot. He has. But he overcomes. Okay, we're going to be wrapping this up soon. Thank you for hanging in with me, listening to this episode of The Actors Room, a documentary about the Brat Pack. We're going to wrap it up with the most fascinating part of the documentary. They interview the writer, the journalist, that termed the Brat Pack. The article came out in June of 1985, and Andrew McCarthy got him to do the interview. Props to the writer. His name is Malcolm. To actually do the interview. That was brave. I'm sure it wasn't easy for both of them to talk about the situation. This writer was just doing his job. And it wasn't a flattering piece. But guess what, folks? That's the critics and the media and all that. Any star, any actor will tell you that there's going to be bad press. There's going to be bad stuff. This is common, you know? And the article blew up, became this thing, and the journalist didn't know how big this was going to be. He just came up with a catchy title for his article, The Brat Pack. He came up with it, he says, after the interview was over with Emilio. He had to think of a title. He went out to dinner with his friends. They were all stuffing their faces. And someone said, oh, you guys are like the fat pack. In reference to, instead of the frat pack, they were the fat pack. And when the journalist heard that, title came up in his mind about Emilio, Rob Lowe, and all the other guys, that they were the Brat Pack. That's how it happened. It just sort of happened. It was a catchy title. And the journalist probably was a little jealous of all these young, budding, beautiful stars that were brats. And were they brats? I think I said in the beginning of this episode that yes, they were. They were brats. Whether they like it or not. Whether they want to reveal that or to say, yes, we were. Admitting it. Okay, we were kind of bratty. They probably wouldn't admit that. We weren't brats. We were just doing our jobs, working in the business, being successful and all that stuff. Did somebody bring you coffee? Yeah, they did. Did somebody take care of your laundry? Did you do laundry back then? Well, not really. Okay. As we come to the conclusion of the Brat Pack documentary, I put, there is a very, very, very funny part at the end because Andrew did a fantastic job in finding and interviewing most of the Brat Pack. Molly Ringwald regretfully and honorably declined to be interviewed. She basically said, no, a part of my life I don't want to talk about ever again. Sorry, Andrew. Whatever. Fine. Andrew says he couldn't find Judd Nelson. Where's Judd? Nobody knows, right? I mean, I'd see him in New York City, but that was 2000, 2001. It's 2024. Where is Judd? Does he want to talk about the Brat Pack? I mean, I would say he was a big part of the Brat Pack. Could he have dropped a line saying, I don't want to do it, sorry. You know, I'm in the middle of something. Okay. The ending of this doc, I don't know if I believe it or not. And will there be a sequel? A sequel starring Judd Nelson. Because the last moments of this doc, the phone rings. Andrew picks it up. Hello? He says, Judd? End of doc. What? What? What are they telling us exactly? That at the last fucking minute of the shooting of this documentary. And I'm talking, folks, to wrapping it up. The cameras are leaving the set. Everyone's been paid. Like, the lights have been taken down. The budget's blown. They even went over. Like, they can't take one more second. Not one more second to talk to Judd Nelson. They just couldn't fit it in, right? One of the most fascinating members of the Brat Pack. And we're made to believe that Andrew, at the last second, got in touch with him. I don't know. It's a cliffhanger, maybe. That there might be a second documentary, and it's just going to be Judd Nelson. The Brat Pack's Judd Nelson, Part 2. Or wait, it would be the Brat Pack Doc, Part 2, starring Judd Nelson. A 3-hour extravaganza talking about John Bender, talking about the St. Elmo's Fire character, can't remember his name, such a prick, and all the other just fascinating work done by Judd Nelson since. I am hard on Judd. You know why? Maybe because I wanted to see more of him. You know, think he could have done some great things, or maybe it's because I just don't like him. Thank you, everyone. I know, right? I'm gonna get some hate. I may get some hate for this episode. I just did. You know, the 30 people that listen to my show. No, I got a very small audience. It's okay. I like it that way. Once it starts getting big, like I've done a couple of docs that got kind of bigger than I thought, just by luck, probably. And I get a lot of hate. And I don't like it. So maybe, I would have been worse off than McCarthy, because things get to me very easily. And I think a lot of artists are sensitive. So I probably would have hated being the Brat Pack. I say I would have loved it. But overall, when I really think about it, it probably would have crushed my little soul. I can't even take comments on YouTube talking about a documentary I did. You know, heaven forbid they're talking about me personally, like in a very sensitive way, and how Andrew McCarthy felt and how it really did scar him. And this was very therapeutic for McCarthy to do this doc. I love talking about docs, especially ones that pertain to film. Actors, writers, stars, Hollywood, the game, the rabbit holes of information, and how you could dive into all these people, their situations, what work they did. You know, did they do theater work on Broadway? You know, we don't hear about that stuff, really. You know, these actors, between projects on film and TV, they do theater in Hartford, Connecticut, or wherever, you know? And they're loving it. I think a lot of actors love going back to the theater to find their roots, right? It's a great thing. I think McCarthy did that. So I give him props. Not only for doing stuff like that, but for giving me this documentary. Although I may not love Andrew's work, I respect him, his passion. He was obviously very passionate about the Brat Pack and how it brought him down. It's too bad he couldn't overcome that. Was he not talented enough? Did it just not happen for him? I'm fascinated by these stories because it's a business. Not everybody is going to be big. Whether that's because of their talent or not, could be just circumstance. But I love diving into that stuff. I hope you enjoyed the show. A little insight on why I haven't done this show in 6 months. I got a promotion at work late last year, right before Christmas. Very excited. And it took a lot out of me. It was very emotional, stressful, a lot going on. And it wasn't a good experience. So I just didn't have the energy or the drive to do anything with this podcast. Zero. So now we are here. I'm got a completely different job and had some time this week. I'm on vacation, so I was able to do a show. I watched this doc and I went, there's my next show. I don't plan anything. I just let it happen. The 6-month hiatus, though, rare. But in this show, it's going to happen. Who knows? The next show may not be for another 3 months. It could be next week. I don't know. But it's my show, and I hope everybody out there is doing great. It's summer here. It's hot. And trying to enjoy outside. And I'm doing things around the house. Fixing stuff. Updating things. I love to do that stuff. And I love to watch film. I watched Oppenheimer a couple of nights ago. That was great. Didn't think I would like it as much as I did. I enjoyed every second of that 3-hour film. Wow. I mean, wow. Murphy. Cillian Murphy. Wow. And I got to tell you, most of the acting in that movie, wow. I was impressed. It flowed well. The writing worked. I was interested in the whole Oppenheimer, the whole bomb, and what I'm fascinated by things I don't understand or know, and all the scientific talk. And there was a character for all the big people in that time period in the film, like Albert Einstein and stuff. I love that stuff. There's Albert Einstein character in this movie. Great. I watched that and I did. Oppenheimer. I strongly recommend it if you haven't seen it. I enjoyed it. Great. I give it a 9 out of 10. It was that good. Deserved all the Oscars it got. So go out. Go to the theater. Watch a live production. I got to do more of that myself. Go to the movie theater. Go see an orchestra. Go to the art museum. Look at tremendous talent doing wonderful things. I'm blown away by talent. It's like little miracles happening. You know, I'm fascinated by art. Not everybody can do it, so I'm floored, and I respect those that give me a passion. It brings it out in me too. Like I feel something. And I think I've said that in my show before. Whether it's sorrow or happiness, laughter, could cry, all of it. I put in a stand-up. I watch that, we laugh. And sometimes I'll watch something sad, you know. I'll put in something and I'll cry. Because, what is that? I mean, crying, it cleanses? Is that what it is? Like it's a cleanse going on? Like people that go for jogs, they're sweating, you know, they're working it, and they're sweating, it feels good, right? You're working out at the gym, you're letting it out, right? They say it's good to sweat. The toxins just leave your body, right? So maybe that's something to do with it. Like the body just it has to do that every now and then. You let it out. Don't keep it bottled in. Your body needs to release sometimes. Tears, sweat, laughter. Ha ha ha! You gotta let it out. It's good. It's cleansing. It's art. It's life. Right? Okay. I've went on long enough because I just haven't in a while. So, have a great day. Thanks for listening. And who knows? I might do another show very soon. It was great to do it. Hope all of you are well. Thank you. God bless. Have a good one.